Forgive them, Lord, for they know not what they do. I thought this was going to be a slam dunk as far as Max Verstappen's drive at the Brazilian Grand Prix, but apparently for the F1 community it isn't. It is not proof positive that Max Verstappen is one of the go-toest drivers that we've ever seen. Not proof positive that Brazil, as far as the adversity, the circumstance, the wet conditions, the coming from 17th, setting fastest lap after fastest lap, overtaking drivers as if they are going in a different formula around the outside of turn 3. Apparently that's not evidence enough, because many F1 fans are denying Max Verstappen yet and still, pretending as if that drive didn't exist, and there is reason for that. I want to double click on it today. I was speaking to some die-hard Max Verstappen naysayers, some grizzled F1 vets, and they say that they didn't even watch the Brazilian Grand Prix, couldn't even entertain it. So hateful, so vehement is their vitriol against Max Verstappen. This is one of these now, right? Blinkers, averting their gaze from sporting excellence. And I don't want to be hateful. I don't want to proselytize and say that they should have watched it. But for the avoidance of doubt and for context, it's important that we understand that there are very different lenses through which people consume and watch their Formula One. By dint of various tenures and experiences, people will say different things and characterise Max Verstappen's race at the Brazilian Grand Prix in very different terms. Here's what I've heard. Again, for the sake of balance, it's important that we consider some of these. That Max Verstappen's journey to victory was lucky, fortuitous circumstances, that but for the Colapinto induced red flag, there was no way that Max Verstappen would have run that race. Some say that by virtue of Gasly and Esteban Ocon, that you can't call that a great race. You can't put that alongside a Sir Lewis Hamilton performance at Singapore 2018. That you can't say that that's a Spa in 1963. Jim Clark leading, lapping all of the rest as near as makes no difference. You can't put that performance alongside an Ayrton Senna of 1993, nor a Michael Schumacher of 1996. That Max Verstappen's still far too aggressive, that as a function of his 2 times 10-second penalty at the Mexican Grand Prix, that you still can't give that dude his credit. Some naysayers say that Max Verstappen's personality is abhorrent, that I can't like him, that I can't get behind him, that still he fails to face down or perform in the face of adversity. What are we doing, ladies and gents? This is chaos. How can you say that? They must not have been watching, right? Genuine, non-rhetorical question. How can you watch what Max Verstappen did and say that? But I've always been a bit insecure. Listen, I don't bat 1,000. I am always the one to go and fact check my nonsense, my F1 ramblings. I will defer to expertise and sometimes defer to non-experts if they state their opinion with chest, with bass in their voice, with confidence. That's my personality and that's my Achilles heel as an F1 fan. So I wanted to go and check what some of the experts, the true experts, have said, because again, I will defer to them and what they say. If they turn around and told me, no, this was a lucky run, that Max Verstappen just rolled himself a pair of sixes, then I'm happy to defer to that. That's not my suspicion. That's not how I ingested the Brazilian Grand Prix. But if that's what they say, I'm humble enough to eat some humble pie. Let's hear what they said. Helmut Marko on the back of an offensive against Lando Norris, saying that he has mental fortitude, lack thereof. This is what Helmut Marko had to say. That Max Verstappen's drive was indicative of him being a real world champion. That's how they move. That it's not, they don't do it despite the adversity, despite the difficult circumstances. That Max Verstappen put that down, that God tier generational performance, because of the adversity. That he has the inner strength, mental fortitude requisite to ball that up. All of the aforementioned adversity, everything that the British biased media were saying, he has that ability to internalise it and weaponise it. Therefore, and that of course is the realms of the great ones. Only the legends in sports can do that. Let's not forget that this is risk adjusted gains, is it not? The race, the guys at the race, legendary F1 publication Scott Mitchell Mount, said this, that Max Verstappen's gift in his first stint was his aggressive posture, that he made moves with certainty and confidence, but with an accuracy, again, commensurate of only the great ones. His vehicle positioning, Lando Norris should be jealous of that. No, he should go away and study it with a view to learn from it and continuously improve his craft. That's what the guys at the race said, it very eloquently summarising the gift that was Max Verstappen's drive. Peter D Wins, a friend of the channel, characterised Max's performance as follows, that Max Verstappen was astonishing. If you don't recognise the gift that was Max Verstappen's drive at the Brazilian Grand Prix because of the difficult circumstances, not despite them, not notwithstanding them, that you don't deserve to be a Formula One, that you don't recognise greatness. Those aren't the waters in which you swim. Charles Leclerc too. He came out, and again, this is on the back of a back and forth, right? Max Verstappen had some things to say about Charles Leclerc this weekend. When following him in the sprint race, he criticised Charles Leclerc yet again for making mistakes. Charles Leclerc, though, didn't choose vengeance. He chose truth. Not like Lando Norris saying that Max Verstappen was fortuitous, that he benefited from lucky circumstances. Oh no, Charles Leclerc chose a different path because real recognise real. Charles Leclerc said that was Max Verstappen's performance, that he was the difference maker. They alluded, people have said that it was the car that all of a sudden Red Bull have designed an RB19 iteration of a vehicle. Charles Leclerc said, no mate, I don't think that was the car. I think that was Max Verstappen. Here's what Toto Wolff has had to say. Not necessarily of the Brazilian Grand Prix, but of Max Verstappen more broadly. Lest we forget, we're deferring to the experts, those who are infinitely closer to the circumstance and have intrinsic information of it. We will defer to them on each and every single occasion. Toto, the boy who cried wolf, has had this to say about Max, and one might argue that the negotiation between Mercedes and Red Bull's guy Max Verstappen is a function of this. Toto Wolff said, Red Bull aren't winning any races anymore. Oh no, Max Verstappen is. That's what Toto Wolff said. And that's why he regrets not signing this chap when he had the opportunity in 2015-16. And for the avoidance of doubt, there are guys and girls inside the paddock who think, as at November 2024, that Max Verstappen is the difference maker to the tune of 0.2. That's right. That around any given track, Max Verstappen, particularly in the wet conditions, will give you an additional 0.2 over the other 19 drivers on the grid. And for the avoidance of doubt, the other 19 are still the best drivers in the world. A lot of the naysayers have said, you know what, all of the others were rubbish, that they turned into rubbish drivers overnight by virtue of their materially underperforming showings at the Brazilian Grand Prix. I call ball feathers on that. These guys and girls, Esteban Ocon, Lewis Hamilton, all of the aforementioned et al., they didn't become bad drivers overnight. It's just that Max Verstappen, by dint of his talents, his ability to make the wet look like it's dry, he makes them look rubbish. And let me say this for the avoidance of doubt finally, because this is where it gets techie. There's a brilliant documentary, right? Max Verstappen, Viaplay sponsored, Off the Beaten Track. And in that documentary, you see and hear Max and Jos and Dr. Helmut Marko talking about Max Verstappen in his karting days. That all of the other karters, the youngsters, the young, hungry prospects dying to get into F1. When it rained in karts, they would all go in the cafeteria, shy away from the dangerous conditions. Max Verstappen, though, would put back on his helmet and his gloves and get out there and grow accustomed to driving in wet conditions, in slicks, in a kart. That, ladies and gentlemen, speaks to who this chap is. Some say that luck is where opportunity meets preparation. And as at November of 2024, who can argue that there is anyone in the world who has spent more time in a vehicle in those wet conditions? Max Verstappen does what he does at the Brazilian Grand Prix because of that, by dint of his experience. Luck, you say, Lando Norris. Lando Norris, to that, I respond this way. Luck, sir, is where hard work meets preparation. Nothing more or less.